All right, everyone, it is time to get going. So this session is called Does Video Improve Social Presence? So they tell me I need to try to stay right here, or if I move, I have to take the microphone. We'll see how well I do this. I'm pretty impressed that there's this many of you on the last day, one of the last sessions. Usually this is, I'm impressed. All right, so a little about me. I'm an educator, I'm a researcher, and I point that out because while I do see myself as an educator first, this is more of a research talk. Now with that, my research is always grounded in my teaching and my practice. And so I hope that it seems very practitioner-based, but it is more of a research talk, so I will kind of throw that out there. And what I will say too with that is it's a research project that I'm doing that's actually, I'm still collecting data this spring and this summer. So you're going to get some preliminary data. And the last thing I'll point out, and I probably should have titled it better, is it's really more about perceptions of instructor video, right? So this isn't, I'm not going to talk about asynchronous video discussions like VoiceThread. That's really not what this is about. And so with that said, if this wasn't what you expected, by all means, find a better session that meets your needs. You can find my slides at patricklowenthal.com. You can find me on Twitter. I'm an assistant professor at Boise State, and I teach in a fully online master's ed tech program. We actually have a new doctorate online as well. So this talk, really I'm going to talk about a little bit of background about social presence, about me, about why I care about this stuff. And then I'm going to get into some methods, the results, and hopefully we'll have some time for discussion. You know, it's funny that when I get 50 minutes, I think it's crazy because I was just at a conference where they gave me 12 minutes, right, to present similar stuff. And so while I really hope to leave time, I have this really bad habit of like growing to my cage. And so if you give me 15 minutes, I'm known to talk to, for 15 minutes. I really hope we have time to really get into a little more discussion. Because while I'm sharing my experience and my research, I think we all have a lot to add here. So social presence, I started getting into social presence, and more specifically, I would say instructor social presence, probably more selfishly. When I started teaching online in 2003, I didn't know with what I did face-to-face how that would translate. I just didn't know. I feared that somehow the things that I think I do well face-to-face would somehow be lost. And so I wasn't even really thinking about students when I got to studying social presence. It was more selfishly, how can I find my voice? How can I connect with students? So I was really just interested in me, selfishly. And I've grown to realize, obviously, it's not just about me. We all need this stuff. But social presence is this idea of how do we establish ourselves as real people, as being there, using communication media. And so it dates back to the 70s, and it's really been popularized in online learning in what's called the community of inquiry framework. And Garrison and his colleagues kind of posit that a learning experience is made up of three presences: social presence, teaching presence, and cognitive presence. So that's kind of the framework for this study. But while I definitely have some of my studies where I'll start with, where's the gap in the literature, where can I contribute, this study was actually a little more selfish or self-serving. I use video in a lot of different ways in my courses. And three ways that I've been using it the last few years is I use video announcements all the time. I use instructional videos, or you think of screencasts, both formal ones as well as follow-up help kind of ones. And I also do video feedback on assignments. So I've been doing this for a while, and it takes a lot of time. And when you think of the pressure to transcribe everything that you do, it's a lot of work. And so I'm constantly wondering, where do I get the most bang for my buck? But even more, the question that drove this study that's in progress is, here's a video announcement of a class of, I think there were about 25 students, and I have 6 views. 6 views, and one of those is mine, right? I mean, obviously, this kind of confused me or bothered me. And there's some other videos where, it's more like half the class, but I don't think there's anyone that I'm getting 100%. And so I'm sitting here wondering, well, why am I taking the time to do this? Why? And then I'm trying to transcribe it. It's like, is this really worth my time? And obviously, if students aren't watching it. So that's kind of what this started, this project. Selfishly, I wanted to know, with the 3 ways that I use video, what do students think? And I've done some past research on looking at, I used Twitter for a while, focusing on building social presence. And that's one where I stopped using because students compared to the other things I did, it just wasn't, I still use Twitter, but not in that way, right? But I sit there and I have to prioritize. And I also sit here and I work with faculty, and I like to proselytize and help people who teach online. And so I'm secretly looking for that magic bullet, right? I want that one thing. And I could tell you, it's not out there. But with that said, I keep searching. So I created a survey, and it basically consists of, it's actually a massive survey. And I'm pretty amazed as many students have completed it, because there's 60 questions, and 30 of them are optional follow-up, but I mean, it's a massive survey. And it first gets on some general questions. What do they think of video? Because there is this popular notion, and theory kind of suggests, that video is a richer medium than, say, text alone. So I asked some questions about that, some of their background. Then I get specifically into things such as, what do they think about video announcements? What do they think about instructional videos? And what do they think about video feedback? And because I'm trying to dig deeper in this. Now, yes? I did the survey in the fall after December, end of the semester. End of the semester. So, and it's funny, I'm trying to record this on my phone too, and Twitter's it'll be interesting to see how that recording works out. But it's a good question, right? So I started to basically survey students in the summer, then in the fall, and I'm going to do it in the spring, and I'm going to do it in the summer as well. And I might do one follow-up next fall, because I'm teaching a doctoral level course and I'm interested in that. And so I'm administering the survey at the end of the semester. And basically, it's looking at 3 different courses. And I bring this up because we're going to come back to this idea at the end of how what you're teaching might change your video needs and students' perceptions of your video use. So these are graduate level courses in an EdTech program fully online. So Internet for Educators, the title's kind of misleading. It's basically Dreamweaver. It's web development for instructors, right? How do you develop instructional websites? And then graphic design for learning, and then online course design. So the first course, very heavy in video, a lot of screencasts, a lot of follow-up, where the other ones aren't as heavy video focused. And so I don't tease out those results right now, but in some follow-up interviews, I really want to dig deeper into that kind of question. The other thing I want to point out, so far I have 68 students completed this massive survey. I hope by this summer I'll at least double this number. So I'm hoping to get a larger in. But with that said, what I do want to point out, the Internet for Educators is a course that I've designed, and other people teach it as well, using my videos. And so some of the sample are people who are taking courses, and I'm, as one of them called it, I'm the video instructor, but I'm not really the instructor of the course, right? And so some things are being teased out of that, because that was another underlying question that I'll get to, is students' perceptions of when it's not their instructor who made the video. So preliminary results. So I want to point this out, that this is 2 semesters I've done. I have 2 semesters to go. And I've not gone through and analyzed all the qualitative data, and there's also going to be follow-up interviews. So far, 60% are female, kind of mirrors our program. They're experienced online learners. The average student's taken 9 courses. They're satisfied with their learning experience. And they have pretty high perceived learning. So overall, I want to know, what do you think of what's going on at Boise State? And they seem to suggest things are going well. So then I wanted to know, well, just generally, do you think it's important to perceive your instructor and your classmates as real people? And as you could see, that they definitely agree across the board, but they have stronger feelings of this need to connect with their instructor, right? So a lot of times in this idea of being learner-centered, or being the guide on the side, sometimes instructors disappear. And students still have this need, in my experience, and the research kind of suggests, for that content expert, that person to give them feedback, that person to guide them, right? That's that thing that you're often missing when you just have that Khan Academy or Linda video. You need that person to interact with, and students are reporting that. So I also asked them just some general things about what do they think about video versus audio versus text, and the ability to establish someone as a real person. And as the research has suggested before, they definitely perceive video as being the most effective at basically doing this. But interestingly, audio and text are very close. And I haven't gone through here and seen if there's a significant difference in any of this preliminary data. And I also want to know, this is another kind of, a lot of my research, I like to question and get into the details. Like, well, why is this stuff, right? We make a lot of assumptions, I think. And one of them is that we always picture students as feeling isolated and alone, right? And if you look at our literature, a lot of the stuff we quote on that is from years ago. And some of these students who have been doing this long enough, they don't feel necessarily isolated and alone. Some still do. But I think we need to dig deeper and find out what's really going on there. But in this case, they're kind of neutral. Like, sometimes, here and there. And then I asked them, do they like it when instructors use video? And throughout this, they seem very positive. Students like video for the most part, but it depends, and I'll get into that because I think it's something that we assume video is good, let's throw video at them. And some of the comments especially that I've already teasing out is, well, it depends on a lot of different circumstances. So video announcements, let's dig in there. So one of the things I was interested in is, well, they're obviously not watching all of my video announcements, so do they actually read their instructor's announcements? So I just asked them. Now, one thing we know about self-report data is students don't always report what actually is going on, right? They might believe they're doing one thing. Like they say, I watched all the video announcements. Well, I can look at the analytics and I know everyone's not watching all the video announcements, despite that they think they are. Right? But you can see that they believe, yeah, they read the announcements, they watch the video announcements. But one of the things I was interested in, this idea of a transcript, right? So if I have a transcript in the post, and even a transcript versus closed captioning is a whole nother question. But like when they get that announcement, are they more likely to read the transcript and not watch the video, watch the video, right? Or, well, and we know that probably the one thing I should put in here is some people don't do any of this, right? So that's probably the other category. But you can see some people actually read it and watch the video. And so there's a lot of questions I have about, gosh, do you basically caption the video, on YouTube? Or are you better off giving the transcript because some people want to just read it? And that's something that came out. Is when some of the feedback I've gotten from students is when they're at work or they're at the airport, they're at these places where they can't watch a video, they don't want to watch a video. But if they can kind of skim the text, that's good enough for them. But you can see other people like to both skim it, read it, and then watch it, right? And so it's just very interesting. Students are a little all over the board here. So I asked them, what are things to influence you to actually watch these? And so one of the things that they point out is if I have time, right? And this is the second one I love because I do a lot of work on social presence. So sometimes I just do announcements to try to check in and see how they're doing and just make a little connection and share something about me. And some of the students are clearly that they don't want that, right? And it's no different than in real life. You think about different meetings and different people. Some people have different social needs, right? Some people like the kind of social time. Other people are like, let's get to the point, right? Internet connection speed. So currently right now I have 4 students outside of the U.S. and they varying, sometimes they have better internet speed, but this is something that comes up, right? Video, sometimes on the go, on mobile devices, this, that, it's tough. And then you always have the one who, there's certain students and it's coming through. They're going to watch and they're going to read everything. Unfortunately, they're not the majority, but there are definitely those in there. So instructional videos. And so what I'll say with this is 2 things. One, when students were completing the survey, they always had the option to skip a question if it didn't pertain to the course that they were taking. So they were basically surveyed because the course has had a high degree of video. But for instance, one of the adjuncts teaching the course I designed that has a lot of instructional videos might not have done video announcements. And so the numbers are a little here or there, but specifically in instructional videos, there are a ton of screencasts in that, what I call the Dreamweaver course, right? And there's screencasts that I created. There's screencasts that they subscribe to lynda.com and watch, right? And then for the adjuncts, they're actually teaching a course where either I, another Boise State faculty member, are doing the screencast or lynda.com. And those were some of the things I'm trying to tease out. Because one of my theories was that students sometimes get bothered when they have to, basically, when we have this big push for open education resources, right? Use things, don't recreate the wheel. But something I've struggled with is, do students somehow feel that they're getting cheated in some way, right? I don't know. And it was something that I wondered about, right? Do students really want their instructor to be the one in all the videos? And I didn't know, and so that's something too that kind of wrapped up in this. And I think a second part of that is, specifically with lynda.com, our students, we actually got rid of a textbook and they have to pay for the Lynda classroom. So that's another kind of element of this. Not only are they having videos done by someone else, they have to pay for it. So there's a question online.
Actually, we have two.
Okay.
One is, do you video each announcement or just ones with certain qualities?
I've done both. And so some semesters I've tried to be consistent where I did video announcements, always had a transcript. Sometimes I would just do a couple. And what I will say about video announcements actually is this semester I did something different. And it's because I'm doing this mobile learning initiative thing at my university. And I was focusing on mobile teaching. How can I just teach on an iPad? Was kind of my, so I'm like doing a little ethnography of my lived experience of this. And so the first time I did it, so I'm trying to go into a coffee shop and try to do so I start the video and I'm on campus, and then I just start walking around campus showing them Boise State. And it's just a couple minutes long. But and once again, not everyone watched it, not everyone loved it, but I got more positive feedback from that. And it wasn't about connecting with me as much as the institution, right? And it was fascinating because so many people, if I asked you, what do you think of Boise State? What comes to mind? Nope. Blue, thank you, blue turf. That's all we hear about is the blue field, right? And I didn't show them the blue field, though I told them by the end of the semester I will. So I need to stick to that. But they loved this idea of seeing the campus. And then I got an elevator in the College of Ed. I showed them the building. I showed them the hall where our office are. I showed them the little thing with all of the faculty's pictures. And it's literally about a minute and a half. And then I've done 2 follow-up things where with these announcements, I do like 30 seconds about Boise, if you will. And we can return to this and talk about this because I think there's some interesting things there and how that could totally be overdone and annoying after a while. But the first one blew people away. One more question online.
Yes. To meet ADA requirements, do you closed caption all video components or just the instructional videos? And how do you create your transcripts? Like, what do you use?
That's the short answer is no, I don't transcribe everything. I try to transcribe all instructional videos. And that's actually part of my tension between this, and we'll come back to the end, is this need to transcribe everything takes so much more time because you'll hear a lot of this is, oh, you have your phone, you can just click record and go. It's so much more time consuming than that. And so I definitely try to transcribe my videos. Now, with that, the question about how do I do it? I've used a service online called, I think it's Rev. And it's one where when I'm in a bind and I'm paying I think it's $1 a minute, but it's what I love about that service is I can give them the video or I post the URL, they will have a transcript often in 24 hours. So that I love for a time-saving thing. I've used Camtasia. Camtasia does not like my voice. I'm also a Mac user, and it's Camtasia Studio you need for that. The best thing I've used is YouTube. YouTube does a really good job. And so whether I want to start from scratch and just do it right there, or whether I want it to do basically the auto transcribe and then I clean up. But even YouTube, especially like the course in Dreamweaver, there's a lot of technical terms that it doesn't pick up easy. Any other questions so far? All right. So, basically ask them, what do you think of instructional videos? I mean, and that's the thing, is like when I started teaching online, or actually when I completed a certificate in developing online learning environments in like 2002, online dial-up. And there wasn't instructional video, right? I had a book basically that I had to go through and start doing it. And so students definitely with a course where they're learning, and these are not like computer science guys, these are educators. But when they're learning HTML, they're learning CSS, they definitely seem to value instructional videos. And they think that generally it's a good way to learn. So then I asked the same kind of question. Did you watch the instructional videos? Now, I didn't ask if they watched them all because there's tons. But they definitely believe, they strongly believe, right, that they that they've watched other videos, because there's meaning, it's applicable directly to what they have to do to be successful in the course. So this was that question that I wondered, do they prefer videos that their instructors created? And so part of this is where I've been at events. I was at Northwest eLearn Conference, and I'm sitting down at lunch, and I'm talking to a student who's in our program. And he's like, I know your voice. He had never been my student, but he had been in one of the courses where they use my videos. And so there's just that notion of how he knows me, but he doesn't know me. And so this was something I was interested in. And you see that they're kind of here or there, right? They don't have strong feelings. So it definitely, from here, and there's definitely some follow-up qualitative data, they don't have strong feelings that their instructor has to create all of the videos, right? And then yes?
Do all your videos, are they all screencasts, or do you have your own video? Do they see you?
Good question. My screencasts, usually they don't see me. And I've battled with that. And I do so many things in my courses that to just add my face.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Thank you. You might have to do that more than once. So the question was basically, do students see my face? Do they see me during these videos, right? Is there a talking head or even a picture, if you will? And my response was more, definitely with all of my instructional or my video announcements, they definitely see me. And they see me more than, but sometimes I'll go through the LMS and I'll point things out. But with a lot of the instructional screencasts that I've done, they don't see me. And that's actually, so these follow-up interviews, that's something I need to dig deeper in, right? Because they get to know me, but there's not a lot of talking head, right? That's probably intentional in some ways. I'm not a big fan of that extra noise. But also, for me, creating videos half the time, it's just easy for me to just hit record and go. Whereas all of a sudden, if I have to, put my makeup on and get pretty, it's going to be rough, right? All right. So as students, so one of the things I do is I give, and in part of it, this started a long time ago, because if I'm in like my courses where I'm teaching them on how to develop websites and design, adding a comment here or there doesn't work well. So I found that, Jing became my best friend, because I could just fire it up and I could talk through what I would see. And so I give video feedback, and it's something that I've gotten really good feedback over the years from my students. It's something that years later I'll find them and they will point this out. So I'm doing my promotion tenure documents, and I'm going through emails that I've gotten from students, and this is something that consistently comes out, is they love the video feedback. And I've done this in varying ways, and I've done it where I've done it on every assignment. And right now I'm trying to do it more strategically as my teaching load has increased. But it's something where I sit there and I walk through. Sometimes it's, you did this wrong, this is how to fix it. Or sometimes it's just a simple, wow, you did this really well. I like the use of color. I like, there's a typo, who knows what. Yes, ma'am.
Is it video audio feedback or just audio feedback?
It's I screencast, essentially, audio, video. So they don't see me once again. They don't see my face. They basically, I fire up Jing. And I use Jing because I love the 5 minutes. The 5 minutes keeps me. So I'm really, I believe in teachers' time and how can you still give good feedback but not go overboard. Would I show them if what? When I'm grading, it's usually actually, and what I'll say is, I grade it before I record it, so I don't actually say any grades in it. And it's because of there's a couple reasons. One is I've shared the feedback for other people to see, right? And there's FERPA, and I don't say anything about the grade. It's more feedback. It's about what you did. It's kind of the sandwich method, right? I try to start off with what they did well. I try to then give some constructive feedback, and then I try to end with something positive. And with that, I'm always looking at what they did, right? And I don't like, if I'm going to grade discussions, I'm not giving video feedback on their discussions. But I could see if that was a main part of a course that someone might do that, right? If it's a course on, I don't know, written argument or something. But this is just something that I got into video feedback because it was the easiest way to say, see how you did this? This isn't good. Do this instead. And then I found that, well, it can be fast. And then I found that students loved it. And it was like, well, or so I thought, right? And so we'll get into that. But students seem to respond really well for the most part. And it's something that comes up in my evaluations regularly. So it's the point where when I would meet with faculty, I'm like, you want to get your evaluations up a little, do just a little video feedback. In another study I did on students' perceptions of instructional strategies for social presence, feedback was one of the biggest things that came up. So, and it didn't matter how we did it, but detailed feedback was throughout the board how they connect with me as an instructor and they learn more about me. So, once again, I want to, are you watching the video feedback? Because the video feedback I usually upload to screencast.com. I want it off of my YouTube channel, and I want it private, or semi-private, if you will, from the world. But when I go through there and I start trying to clean up, I can go through and I can find some of these videos where no one's viewed it, right? So I've taken time to give feedback, and they didn't watch it, right? It chaps me. But this happens, right? So I wanted to know, do they at least think that they watch it, right? And then more than that, I want to know, do they ever watch it more than once? Because a lot of times I'm showing them how to do stuff, right? And so that kind of interests me too. So even though some aren't watching it, some are watching it more than once. And then, so I've written an article on debt to the digital Dropbox. Well, we'll go with your question.
Just super quick.
Yeah.
So this week in my internet class, we're actually doing HTML, CSS, and I made a screener,
Yeah.
equivalent to a student, and she ended up passing that to other students that she was talking to that were having similar problems.
Yep.
And so it kind of became viral within my class, even though it was directed towards one student.
Definitely. And so I have a questions area, like, almost anyone, help desk, if you will, in the course. And that's where students, I encourage them to post questions. And I will almost always create a video about the problem, and then I'll post it so other people can see it. And I get some of that same reaction. So his comment was, I forgot to repeat it for those online, was that in his course right now where he's doing HTML, CSS, a student had a problem. He posted made a video, and then she shared it out with other people. So that one-on-one feedback became feedback from many. Does that sound? So I wrote this article for EduCalls called Debt to the Digital Dropbox with a colleague of mine at See Online. In our basic premise, and it's funny, it's probably the thing that people either love or hate the most that I've ever written. But it's encouraging people in faculty to, rather than have students upload that assignment in the Dropbox, which Blackboard used to call it. It's called the assignment tool now, I think. Or there's equivalent in every LMS, right? That little black box that you put things and you take it, you look at it, and you slide it back to them, right? Well, we argue that there's often a good time and there's good reason to post assignments and discussions so everyone can see each other's work, and then they can comment on each other's work, and then you can comment on their work. And so there's like this culture of collaboration and feedback, right? And so one of the things I've done in varying degrees over the years is not only in the questions, sometimes when people do assignments, for years I did this at University of Colorado Denver, I would create these feedback videos and I'd post them online. So if anyone wanted to see it, they could see it. So it's something that's important to me to wonder, do they enjoy this, right? Do they think it's helpful to view others' work? And they're kind of like, eh. And then you even push them a little further and say, would you actually watch video feedback? And so once again, it's not an overwhelming yes, right? And so I've slowly stopped posting all these just because it takes that extra work. And if they're not going to be watching, once again, I'm selfishly looking for the biggest bang for my buck. So some other results. So I basically just asked them between asynchronous video or synchronous video, which do they prefer? And 87% said they prefer asynchronous video. The funny thing is when I start looking at the open-ended comments, so many of them mention the need, and we don't do a lot of synchronous required sessions in our program. We have students in multiple countries. And so we get dinged a lot of times of some students wanting a lot more of that synchronous video, right? They want those sessions, but yet when you push them and you really ask them, most of them don't want to be bothered with that. But there's those few who want it, who need it. And so that's one of the struggles we find with teaching, right? How do you support everyone when everyone often has varying needs? So then I specifically asked them about the ways that I use video. What do they find the most helpful? And overwhelmingly, 70% said the instructional videos because it taught them what the skills that they needed. It was I hate to even think of it, but essentially the lecture, if you will. Though sometimes my instructional videos are more of a problem-solving reaction than a how-to, but that's something that's come out with it. Yes?
So, looking at the numbers, sometimes when you aggregate numbers, you lose data to a certain extent. Like, talk about what does it mean if 3 out of 5 agrees?
Definitely.
Half of them agree and half disagree, or it's kind of done.
Yeah.
I just wondered if, as you're looking at the numbers, maybe you get more weeds, or you try to look for patterns or clusters, like certain student profiles that might have particular needs.
I haven't yet, but that's something that I want to break it down by course and then by looking for those. And also for each one of these questions, they had an optional follow-up to explain how or why they answered it the way they did.
You have to repeat the question, sorry.
So the question, thank you, someone's paying attention. So the question was, basically, data sometimes is lost when you just sit there and you look at an average, you look at something, because you could find it spiking in different directions. And so the question was basically, have I dug into it more to find out, are there any interesting patterns there? And so my basic answer is no, because I'm 2 semesters into collecting data. I have 2 more. I'm trying not to dig into the data too much yet, but I also want to dig in enough because I want to do some follow-up interviews with people to try to get at some of the stuff, right? I want to try to find, for instance, someone who clearly, let's say, loves that synchronous video and follow up and really get a more in-depth conversation. What's going on there? And so for me, for more than anything, I'm more interested in the difference, right? It's those outliers really interest me because there's something going on there. But yeah, so in time, I hope to. I would say, yeah, we'll have more data. I have so much qualitative data alone, and then to do interviews on top. But that's where the richness is for me.
We have a couple questions from our virtual audience.
Yes.
What about FERPA or student privacy when distributing student feedback? Do you store the files in screencast.com?
Yes. So, so with FERPA, the first thing is, as long as I'm not sharing grades, I'm fine with FERPA. And I don't use their full last name. I don't get, and so, and honestly, I don't even usually use their name. I just go right into their instructional product. And so I do store them on screencast. I do not use grades. So I'm not a lawyer and I don't want to give anyone FERPA advice, but have no concerns with the way that I've used that. And for me, I specifically get them on, you could use YouTube, you could post them. I mean, it depends on whatever you have. Sometimes you might have your own media server and, and often that's kind of the ideal. But to me, the big key is not to say anything about their grades. So.
And do you record the instructional videos so that they are reusable, or do you do it over and over again each semester?
Both. So one of the things, the bad thing about like teaching a course with software, especially from Adobe, is there's a new version every freaking 6 months. Or you could think of Google, right? YouTube changes so it's one of those things that I wish I could just create a video and it would be good forever, right? And that's one of the issues and the tensions more about even transcribing every video is when you're constantly having to update videos and then transcribe them, that workload becomes very intense. And so, but for certain subjects, and I'm not even going to try to give you an example because you always offend someone when you do, but certain subjects are more stable and don't change as much over time, that you could create certain content that would be hopefully always valuable. Maybe not. But even in that case, I think it's often good for you to return to a subject because you have a different perspective. But there's definitely, besides the software updates, different things arise. In my experience, there's no one perfect student or typical student. Every semester I have a different group, and some semesters their needs vary. And so I often have to sometimes create something that, hey, I thought I had a video that was really clear, and then this group, it's not working, and so I created another one. And so I guess to answer that question, I do both. Any other questions? All right, I'm hoping to wrap this up soon and we can talk at least for a little while because you guys have a lot to add to this. So some of my other research has gotten in this. I hate it when we make claims like, well, just video is good, right? Video helps social presence. Well, what do you mean by that? Is it one way? Is it one to many? Is it asynchronous video? Is it synchronous video? What do you mean? right? And so I just wanted to dig in a little more at these situational factors. And so I'll show you some things on this. So basically I asked students, for instance, one-on-one, two-way synchronous video, right? So you think of a Skype session. What do they think about that? Versus basically like a Adobe Connect session. Well, they definitely value that one-on-one more than when they think of a group. Same thing, you'll see a trend here, right? So the first bit I'm going into video, then I go into audio, then I go into text. But what I'm really interested in is one-on-one personal versus mini, right? Because in my past research, it's kind of suggested that that one-on-one is very powerful. I wrote an article for EduCause, and it basically talked about low-tech tools. And the idea of the telephone can be amazing. Email, despite everyone wanting to say email's dead and it's just for old people, when a student has a problem, in a one-on-one email can be very powerful and very effective. And so those were the kinds of things I was interested in. Yes?
I've got 2 questions.
Go for it.
That you're going to have to repeat.
Thank you.
Okay, so just before this, you had, I think, synchronous as one of the things you were asking your students about. So are you using synchronous video in your class? Because I didn't hear you talk about that. And secondly, what exactly is the question that you're asking them here? Just reading here.
Yeah. Great. Good stuff. So the first question is, what do I do with synchronous video? Because I haven't mentioned it so far. And so I use, basically I do virtual office hours. And I call them, this semester I've rebranded them. And this was motivated by a colleague of mine. And I call them happy hours. So I do 4 happy hours and they're optional. And so I've been trying to find that sweet spot of how many is enough. Because I used to do, Saturday morning office hours and no one came. Or usually it was 1 or 2 people came. So it was always enough where you're like, oh gosh, I can't leave, right? I gotta do this. But it was never that much where you're like, the ROI here is not good. Like, this is not worth my time. Was my existential kind of debate, right? And so now I've kind of gone, and then I think it was last semester, I did 1 in the middle of the semester. And I think 15% showed up and they loved it. And they were like, well, we should do more. So now my new magic number, and we'll see how it works, is I've done 4 this semester. And the first 2 were attended about 10-15%. And the second and last one person showed up. And the last one, nobody showed up. All right, so that's how I use synchronous sessions. And so we struggle with this. And so I vary the time. So if people are in different time zones, I put the invitation. If someone does live in Brazil, I will do a one-on-one follow-up. I also record it and post the recording. And so those are things that I use in the happy hour. But I think just calling it happy hour kind of framed as this is a time to get together and to chat about anything about the course, right? And so it's not a structured lecture, but that's how I use that. All right, so then the next question was, what am I really asking here? And so the question was, it was broken down into different things, but it was, to what degree on a 5-point scale do you agree that these types of things help establish another person as being real, being there? So basically, how does two-way synchronous video, do you agree that it helps establish social presence, right? And on a 5-point scale, so that's pretty high. And so I'm going to go down, and we're going to go down in chunks, and then I'm going to go back and show you ranked, and then I'm going to go back and show you one other element of this. So then, asynchronous video. So this idea of recording it, right? Think of feedback, think of anything where I've created a video for you. Not for the whole class. Now, the whole class might later watch it, but I created it for you versus, something on YouTube or something for the whole class or for the mini. Same thing about audio. You can start seeing it going down. But a 3 is really kind of that neither agree nor disagree. It's kind of blah. And so that goes back to that need to dig into that data a little more and seeing the follow-up comments about these. Because surprisingly, even though I said clearly that they were optional, over half the people who completed it so far have given me comments. So literally, I think the survey probably took them 45 minutes. I feel a little guilty. Just a little. All right, so in synchronous audio, once again. So I'm interested in the synchronous versus asynchronous group, right? And so I'm going to get through here so we can look at the top 2. So synchronous video, one-on-one, two-way, right? And then personal, asynchronous video. Typo. No. So clearly that they see video is the number 1. But on the other end, they clearly see text as the least. right? So when they think about social presence, text is the least effective. And then if we look at the winners in each category, if you will, it's about that one-on-one. It's about that personal. That's what matters more when they think of instructor presence. So in some of this, you're like, well, duh. I mean, this isn't, but this does confirm this idea that it's when you reach out to that student and you make that connection, that's the part that matters. So when the survey started, basically asked them, do they think videos can help establish social presence? They said yes, and then I basically went through and asked about each of these: video announcements, video feedback, instructional videos. And then interestingly, then they say, I know my instructor better as a result of the video. So it's this idea of, it's one thing for you to be seen as a real person, but to really know you is kind of even a little more, right? And so some people will go out of their way to add personal elements in videos or things. Whether it's, this is my dog, this is, my kid, you name it. But some interesting things there to follow up with follow-up interviews. The other thing is, did they enjoy the use of video? So it's one thing to think, and have them, but they basically said, yeah, they enjoyed the use of video in the class. So I got 3 more quotes, and then we'll kind of get in a discussion. I'm going to let you read this. I love this notion of digital silence. And this is something where I've faulted from this, where sometimes someone have a question, and first I expect them to read my mind, because in my mind I'm saying, I'm going to create you a video, right? Or I'm in a hotel, and maybe it takes me longer to get that video up. And what this student's basically saying is, more immediate feedback faster is more important than a video, right? And so I've been trying to improve that with my own thing. If I am doing a video and something's going to take me time, to reach out and tell them, hey, video's coming, but if you'd like to talk, or if you'd like to, and you'll see some of the same things with, help support and other things. People want that. Timely is very important. So was another one that stood out. So not everything has to be in a video. And this goes back to, we love video, and video seems to be this, video came up in these sessions here about video presence consistently, right? But some of the students definitely are real clear that they don't want everything to be a video. So this one I thought was interesting, because this is a student who wasn't in my course, but's talking about me being the video instructor. And so this is an element that I want to dig in deeper, this idea of, and would it matter, because did it somehow seem better because I am a Boise State faculty and they trusted they would later, I'm part of the program? Would that be different than like that connection you get with the person doing the lynda.com video? So there's a lot of rich stuff we have to mine more. And so I want to open this up for discussion. I do want to just point out kind of 4 things that have stood out. And one of them is one size doesn't fit all. I really want that magic, that one thing. And so for a while I got away from, for instance, synchronous sessions because only 10% showed up. But what I've learned so far in my teaching is that the 10% who showed up, they really need it. And so even though it is inconvenient, right, when you're like, well, it's only 10%, that's what they need. In some ways, that's what office hours is meant for, right? It's for the people who need that extra time. And so it's okay that not everyone has the same social presence needs. And that's some of my own research is basically confirming this, is that everyone doesn't have this magic social presence number. Right? It's almost like a sleep number bed. What's your number? Because we all have different ones. And that's okay. But as instructors, we need to somehow get a better idea of trying to meet people where they're at and give them what they need. Video announcements. So for me, my big aha is, students didn't say they dislike video announcements, but I'm definitely going to do less of them. So far, and that's when I'm reflecting on my own teaching, I'm probably still, because this one course is my first course, or they take in the first semester of the program, I'll probably still do the Boise State tour, because that was very, students responded very well to that. And that goes back to a question before, is I debate, I could do one and just reuse it, but is it somehow more authentic with me kind of just clumsily walking around, right, and creating a new one for that group. So if it's spring, they can see it spring out. If there's snow in there, and they can see it snow. So that's an internal thing I have to deal with. But for me, video announcements might not be the best use of my time when I think about this as a whole. Probably want to eliminate them because some students pointed out that that is their favorite thing. Another thing is subject matter differences. And some other research, there's been other research in the community of inquiry that suggests that there are subject matter differences, and we teach differently. I mean, at my old university, we would have business classes that have 70 people, psychology classes that 100, and then my class would have 20, right? Different things happen when your class scale grows often. Not always, but often. And so what's going on, subject matter, also something that's highly technical that they really need the video to do versus something that they could be more effective, perhaps with a book alone or reading. Don't know, but a lot needs to be dug in there. And then this accessibility piece that people brought up, I think we have to be, giving a transcription, a text equivalent, and that's intense, and it's intense for faculty, and there's our own university we're trying to wrestle with. How do we do that? How do you support faculty? Because while the Disability Resource Center will send someone in to sign, they don't provide necessarily the same support for transcribing video. And that's something where it seems almost like a double standard. And it's nothing against my employer. You probably all can share similar things, that our universities don't know how to deal with video needs, right? And so what I've had some colleagues kind of point out is the lesson that they've learned is just get rid of video then. It's too much work. And that's too bad because, as you can see, students respond really well. So where are we with time? So this is my information, my website. You can find slides. You can find other research I've done on social presence. What are some final comments? And if anyone got to go do your thing. Thoughts, reactions? Yes, ma'am.
Would you be open or interested to getting this survey replicated with students that aren't necessarily in web design, familiar with
Definitely.
personal finance? And I'm in a program that oversees 9 online courses with varying degrees of students. So I'd be interested.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Follow up with me. And in the same way, too, it's something that, maybe only part of the survey will meet for your needs and other things. But that's something back to difference matters. I think a lot of our research, we make assumptions off one little study on social presence with one little class, where we need research being done in a lot of different environments because it might be different at community college, might be different at, so I said one thing about the fall, I'm teaching a doctoral course that's it's Introduction to Doctoral Studies. And so I'm probably going to wait and survey that group too, because it's going to be a very different group. And I want to just see, what do they think? Yes, sir.
Were your students mostly undergrad or?
They were grad students taking 3 different online courses. Yes?
Just in their age bracket?
Excuse me?
Just in their age?
I did not. And I can look at general data in our program because it is a graduate program. Our average students tend to be in mid-30s.
But you probably have a bigger range when it's on the graduate program.
Yes.
See if there were differences based on
Definitely.
or gender.
I did do gender, and that's something that definitely, and what I do want to look at is I want to look at a relationship between how many online courses they've had and their perceptions, because one of my theories is as we become more literate with online communication, our needs change. So my needs were very different when I was taking an online course in dial-up in 2001, where now it's everything changes. Yes, ma'am.
About how long are your instructions?
So the question is how long are the instructional videos? If I probably should average them out, but I would say my instructor feedback is usually 5 minutes because I use Jing and I let it shut me up. My instructional videos probably average more about 20 minutes. And more research actually needs to be done on cognitive load and what's that optimal time. Yes, ma'am.
Do you ever write out what you're going to say so that you have a transcription before you do the videos, or do you always do the video and then try to transcribe it?
So the question is, do I write out what I'm going to say, or do I basically write it later, right? And I always transcribe later. It's just and it's probably just the way my brain is. I have a hard time following a script. I've tried it. It just feels so unnatural. So I never script out what I talk, and I probably should. Any other questions? All right, safe travels, everyone. Thanks. I do. I have some business cards up here. Yes.
Thank you. And then also, she said I'm teaching online courses, probably about 8 of them per semester for so many years, and I would like to incorporate kind of survey because
Okay.
I'm using video, audio,
Yeah.
on social networks, so I don't know what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah.
I've been doing some, so I'll send you. Thank
Great.
you. Wonderful presentation.
I want to share my information too. I'm doing a study session.
Oh,
Your
wonderful.
introduction is in that aspect.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. And here's a
Thank
card.
you. Very good.
Great. Good.
I'm actually working on some research on videos as well. Looking at quality to be compared to different methods. So I appreciate the research.
Oh, great. Do you have a card?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So have you done other studies on videos as well?
On video, no. I did a study on social presence and asking them what they think of basically perceptions of all kinds of strategies from the phone. And so that got at a little bit of video, but not much. And then I also did one digital storytelling because I've done some work
So
on
you're
that.
having it from the student side, then students using videos?
Yes. Yes. So the digital storytelling one is where they basically create a digital story, and so having them. So that was an internet higher education method.
Oh, okay.